There are many videos about finding the very best performing premium self-defense ammo. However, if I can't find that ammo at my local store for a reasonable price, I'm probably not going to buy it. The goal of this video is to find out what inexpensive bullets perform as good as the premium ones. I will be showing you the penetration and expansion of many bullets. Some of these rounds will be shot into clear synthetic ballistics gelatin, but most will be shot into organic ballistics gel. The tests that used clear gel are clearly labeled as such because clear gel sometimes give different results than organic gelatin. Also, some tests consist of just 1 or 2 rounds fired. Other tests consist of multiple rounds fired to take into account the variability of penetration that naturally happens. One more thing, the FBI considers that 12 inches of penetration in 10% organic gelatin to be the minimum for consistent effectiveness. They also consider penetration over 18 inches to be potentially dangerous to bystanders, as it's likely that such a bullet will pass through the intended target and still have enough energy to kill or injure a bystander on the other side. Let's start out with the Winchester USA rounds. I refer to them as Winchester White Box or WWB throughout this video. First of all, the 9mm and 40 Smith & Wesson rounds did very good. Next, the 357 Sig round didn't do so well, as its high velocity caused the bullet to expand more than it should have. If it had a velocity similar to 9mm, I'm sure it would have done much better. The 38 Special Plus P and the 357 Magnum rounds expanded too much to have good penetration. The 357 Magnum actually expanded enough that the lead started to fragment off. With longer barrels, this problem would likely be even worse. As a side note, the 38 Special and the 357 Magnum rounds are actually semi-jacketed hollow points. The Winchester calls them jacketed hollow points. My conclusion for Winchester White Box is that it's generally good for calibers 9mm, 40, and very likely 45. In comparison, the 125 grain Remington UMC 357 Magnum and 38 Plus P rounds did pretty good, seemingly regardless of barrel length. The only problem being that denim consistently clogged up the hollow point during the 38 Plus P short barrel tests. It seems that this clogging only happens with relatively low velocity, because this didn't happen with the long barrel 38 Plus B or with the 357 Magnum shots. Both the 115 grain 9mm and the 230 grain 45 performed well. Remington UMC is good for 9mm, 45, 38 Plus B, 357 Magnum, and very likely 40 Smith & Wesson. Now for PMC Bronze. 9mm PMC ammo expands and penetrates well in organic ballistics gel. However, the same 115 grain round penetrates noticeably farther in clear gelatin. It appears to me that PMC Bronze does not expand well in clear gel, and this can be very misleading if all you see is clear gelatin tests. We know that 9mm, 10mm, and 357 Magnum all do well in organic ballistics gel, and that's what's really important. It's very likely that 40 and 45 also do well, which would make PMC Bronze great, seemingly across the board. Now, for PPU/Privi Partizan. Across the board, it did pretty poorly. The 40 Smith & Wesson round didn't expand, and the 10mm round didn't expand until it was given a larger powder charge. Unless you have a really long 10mm aftermarket barrel, the standard 10mm load will be very disappointing. As for the 9mm round, in my opinion, the hollow point is not large enough for the bullet to expand properly. I very much doubt that increased velocity can make up for this shortcoming. The only round that might be usable is the 357 Magnum. Seeing as how clear gelatin makes bullets penetrate deeper, I question if this round really overpenetrates. I frankly don't have enough data to make a judgment whether it's really good or bad. Even if it does overpenetrate, it could still be used as a hunting round. Right off the bat, we can see that the 115 grain 9mm Magtech round at the top is severely underpenetrating. The Guardian 9mm Plus P round does not consistently penetrate enough either. The clear gelatin is misleading because it makes the round look like it penetrates 3.5 inches more on average than it does in organic gelatin. It seems that the 140 Smith & Wesson bonded round didn't expand because of the denim clogging the hollow point. This may not be a persistent problem because this didn't happen with any of the other Magtech rounds that I have seen tested. However, even without these denim problems, the round was consistently lacking penetration. It was not mentioned whether the 10mm round was bonded or not, but regardless, it did even worse than the 40 Smith & Wesson in penetration. None of these Magtech rounds did good enough. This obviously doesn't mean that Magtech can't make good ammo. They can, and I've seen some of their premium hollow points perform much better in comparison. These are the old Federal high shock rounds, and it's clear why they are not popular anymore, because they are not very good. It seems that regardless of caliber, high shocks will not reliably expand if the target is wearing thick clothes. However, if you live in a place where it never gets cold enough to wear thick clothes, and for some reason you only have 40 Smith & Wesson high shocks, you could probably use them until you find better bullets. The only other thing really worth mentioning is that with the same barrel length, the heavier 147 grain 9mm bullets travel deeper than the lighter ones. Now for Sellier and Bellot. First of all, the 9mm HS round is not reliably penetrating deep enough, and I would not trust it. It will have good penetration if it goes through a car windshield and heavy clothing, but this is clearly the exception to the rule that is generally low penetration. As for the 9mm jacketed hollow point, it did good in general. It did have a couple of minor shortcomings, though I don't show this on the chart. When it was shot through a car windshield, it fragmented apart, and the penetration was suspiciously not mentioned. The penetration was a little short with the ribs, heavy clothing, and gelatin test. However, I have a feeling that a slightly shorter barrel or a heavier 124 grain round would solve this problem. One of the 9mm rounds failed to expand in clear gel. This was obviously caused by the gelatin itself, because there was no denim to clog the hollow point. Also, during testing, the HS round penetrated the same amount as a full metal jacket did during the windshield test. Before I talk about the 10mm Sellier and Bellot round, I'm going to make a quick detour and comparison. Both of these rounds were fired into both clear and organic gelatin. The clear gelatin made these rounds penetrate 4 or 5 inches deeper on average. Now that we got that out of the way, I can say that the Sellier and Bellot 10mm round did pretty good. When we take into account that it is probably penetrating 4 or 5 inches less in organic gelatin, we can see that it's actually not at risk of over-penetration, and it will perform very well in real life. Now, for some Hornady bullets. The rounds shown here are actually not budget rounds, but some of them use the same XTP bullets as the budget American gunner line does. The reason why I have the FTX bullets shown here as well is because I wanted to compare them with the XTP bullets. I'm going to take another brief detour to explain the differences between the FTX and the XTP bullets. The critical defense line uses the FTX bullets. FTX bullets are designed to expand regardless if the target is wearing heavy clothes. They have a red insert in the tip to keep it from being clogged with clothing and not expanding. These rounds are intended to be used in small handguns that have short barrels and consequently low velocity. Also, the intent behind these rounds is to limit penetration to 11 to 12 inches to limit the risk of overpenetration. This is in stark contrast to the FBI's view, which is that you should have a minimum of 12 inches and overpenetration is only a problem past 18 inches. In comparison, the XTP bullet, or Extreme Terminal Performance, is designed for deep penetration, hence the terminal performance in the name. I also wanted to mention that the critical duty is totally different from the critical defense line. The critical duty uses a bullet that is intended to be able to pass through barriers and still meet the 12-inch FBI penetration minimum. Now we got that covered, what I'm about to tell you will make more sense. Look at the ammo colored in red. The reason why this FTX bullet is underpenetrating so much here is that it was designed to be used with a short barrel. When the velocity is too high, the bullet overexpands and underpenetrates. The 9mm and 40 caliber FTX rounds are colored in yellow. They were both used in the proper barrel length, but they still slightly underpenetrate due to the design of their bullet. This is the result of a bullet intended to have minimal penetration. Comparatively, the XTP bullets offer good penetration almost across the board due to their design. The only XTP round that was on the low end of penetration was the Plus P 9mm from the 4-inch barrel. Almost always, more velocity results in less penetration. There are a lot of budget hollow points that I haven't mentioned, and this is because there haven't been enough tests for me to make solid conclusions about their performance. I know what I'm showing aren't really budget rounds, but I wanted to include the Sig V-Crowns in this video as well. Across calibers, the V-Crowns gave consistently deep penetration. The only problem with the V-Crowns is that they seem to clog up with denim. This is a particularly big problem if you have a 380, as all 5 of the 380 rounds clogged with denim and penetrated roughly 24 inches. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my video.